the tides roll. We're mining for Bitcoin and it's taking its toll. Every day there's more treasure in sight, so we keep on rolling through the day and the night. Waves of fortune keep us spinning around in the ocean where the blocks are found. Riding the waves in our digital boats. Decentralized dreams drive us to the goal. We cast our lines in the virtual sea, where the bits are plenty and the blocks are free. The current's strong and the water's deep, but in the ocean, there's no time for sleep. Surfing on hashes, riding the proof. The blockchain's a mystery, always aloof. Our rigs are roaring the electric foam. In the heart of the ocean, we found our home. Waves of fortune keep us spinning around in the ocean where the blocks are found. Riding the waves in our digital boats. Decentralized dreams drive us to the goal. We cast our lines in the virtual sea, where the bits are plenty and the blocks are free. The current's strong and the water's deep, but in the ocean, there's no time for sleep. Surfing on hashes, riding the proof. The blockchain's a mystery, always aloof. Our rigs are rolling the electric foam. In the heart of the ocean, we found our home. Waves of fortune keep us spinning around in the ocean where the blocks are found. Riding the waves in our digital boats. Decentralized dreams drive us to the goal.
All right. Good morning, everybody. That's right. We're alive. We're awake. Here it is, day 2, live in Minnesota, the mining conference here at our main stage. We welcome you all back for an exciting morning. We got a special team, special things happening right from the ocean itself. Without delay, please, everybody, welcome the one and only voice of ocean, Mark Artimko. Good to see you.
Hello, Minnesota! Can we get a round of applause for Jack Fife, our wonderful MC? What about Scott Offord and all the awesome organizers and sound crew?
Hand off.
All right, switch mics. Is this better? Okay. My name is Mark Artimko. I am the president and co-founder of Ocean, and I have the honor today of making an exciting announcement about Ocean. Before we get into that, just to build some more suspense, I would like to... first of all, welcome to all of you guys here. Thank you so much. You are the miners. You are the reason we exist. You're the reason we resurrected the mining pool for decentralization, and we wanted to share this moment in person with you, so thank you so much. Yeah. To all of you, and we're excited that you joined us. So before we go on with the announcement, we just wanted to take a moment to recognize one of our miners who is actually the host for this conference. This is Jared from Just for Crypto. Jared, would you mind coming up to the stage? Welcome, buddy. Thanks. All right, Jared I'm getting some feedback if you guys are okay with that. All right. So Jared, about a month ago, or at the beginning of September, was mining on Ocean, and he found a block on September the 5th, which is awesome, right? Like finding a block and knowing that it's your ASIC server that actually found it. And he put this little sticker on it, and it's got the block height 859930. And that was awesome in and of itself. And then less than 24 hours later, Jared found another block, and he posted this, and he's like, "You guys won't believe me, but we found another block." And like, what's the probability of that? Like it's one in a million or something. And not only did the same miner find a block, not only was it in the same facility, but it was 6 feet apart from the first one. And I just thought that was so cool and worthy of some kind of appreciation. So let's get a hand for Eric and for Jared and ASICs. So we have the first block over here, 8:59:930. 21 hours later, 8:60:062. So there's been 860,000 blocks mined, approximately. About 6 million ASIC servers in the world. For the most part, most of those ASICs will never see a block. Jared found 2 of them 6 feet apart within 2 days. So I would like to present Jared with something we made. Luke Daster, who couldn't be here with us today, he printed this on his own with a 3D printer at home, just to sort of commemorate this special achievement. All right, we have a 3D printed ocean block. For those of you on Spaces, it's about 8 inches tall. It's got the ocean logo in the middle, ocean across the bottom, and it's got the 2 block heights across the top, 8:59:930, surpassed by 8:60:062, and on the bottom, designed and printed by Luke Daster. So Jared, on behalf of the Ocean team, thank you. All right, as we lead up into this announcement, I'd like to just kind of bring it back to the origins of Ocean, to give you all a bit of the Ocean story. For those who don't know, this is a dream of ours that's been 18 months in the making. The Ocean is a relaunch of one of the earliest mining pools in Bitcoin, which was called Eligius. This ran, I think it was launched in 2011, and it ran successfully for 6 years with Luke Daster and Jason Hughes, who some of you may know as WizKid57. It was a successful pool. It was innovative. At one point, it had 20% of the hash rate, and I think it was loved by miners, and it was like a pool for the miners. Luke and Jason eventually wound down the pool to pursue other interests. Luke went on to become, legendary in Bitcoin. Jason legendary in the world of Tesla hacking, and Luke always kept the pool domain active with the hope of one day bringing it back to life. And so 2023, beginning of 2023, about a year after Luke and I met and became friends, we decided to go into business together and start a company. And like all entrepreneurs, as we were brainstorming, trying to figure out what to do, we looked at Bitcoin and what the needs were. And Luke, being a passionate protector of Bitcoin and an advocate and doing everything, always doing everything for the protection and the good of Bitcoin, we saw the threat of centralization as something that was building, and something had to be done about it. So we began the journey of resurrecting Luke's old mining pool, Eligius, with the intention of making it a decentralized mining pool. And initially we called it Eligius, and I'll share with you all this funny story. We had a strategy call with our lead investor, Jack Dorsey, and on the call, he just kind of asked us bluntly, when you guys tell people about your pool, Eligius, like what are they going to type into Google or whatever the Explorer is? And we're like, well, they're going to type Eligius. And then he said, well, how do you spell it? And Eligius is if you don't know, it's a really hard word to spell and a really hard word to say because the three of us couldn't even pronounce it the same way. So we decided at that time that it was maybe time for a bit of a rebrand. So we went to the marketing drawing board and we came up with Ocean because the ocean is transparent and the ocean is permissionless. Anybody can use it. So that was how Ocean was born. And we launched with the goal of making Bitcoin mining decentralized at the pool level. There was a number of paradigm shifts that occurred along the way as we were sort of working behind the scenes to get our products ready. One of those things was really just bringing awareness to the fact that mining is a very complex process and it involves intelligent parts of mining, such as running a full node, building a local mempool, designing a block template, picking transactions, running filters, doing all of those things where you as the miner get to decide what goes in the blockchain. And then there's the hashing component. And over the years, those two functions have been split, where the miners have done the hashing and the pools have done all the decision making. And so just bringing awareness and education that what we have today is not how Bitcoin started, and it wasn't how it was intended to be run. And so that was a very good experience. We also relaunched the pool as a permissionless pool. Just like Bitcoin itself is permissionless. You don't need permission to use Bitcoin, so why should you require permission to mine Bitcoin? So Ocean is a permissionless pool. We also offer payments directly from the network through the generation transaction and in a non-custodial way. And that is awesome. And we are radically transparent. We try to be transparent in everything we do on social media, but also in the software through APIs, through information. If you want to look at every single share that you mine as a miner, you can, and you can audit us in real time and hold us accountable. And all of these, and then we launched several templates for miners to choose from to direct your hash rate, but because what goes in the chain should be decided by the miners, not the pool. And so we were the first pool to launch choice of templates. We had initially 3 templates. We expanded it to 4, and miners could put their hash rate where they wanted to. And at least that was a step in the right direction. And we call that the path to decentralization. So that was the path to decentralization. It started on November 28, 2023. There's a typo there. And it's been 10 months and 1 day to today. So the timing is very fitting. So we were on a path to decentralization, and today we are arriving at decentralization. So I would like to please cue the video.
Incentives drive Bitcoin's success to run nodes, mine, and decentralize. Yet the rise of pools has shifted incentives towards centralization, undermining the sovereignty and censorship resistance of Bitcoin. Now is the time to act to keep Bitcoin free. DATUM, Decentralized Alternative Templates for Universal Mining. Engineered for sovereignty, built to return power and the block space to the miners. DATUM on Ocean.
We have threats of centralization, and this is a big one. Luke, to me, has always kind of served that role of protector of Bitcoin. I don't think any of us would really be here today if he didn't take on the actions he took. Every action he's taken for Bitcoin has been principled and one of protecting it and making it better. He's a bit of a guardian angel.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please give a round of applause for the one and only Chief Boiling Officer of Ocean, Bitcoin mechanic.
Is this one? Hello, everyone. How's it going? Did you enjoy that video? Yeah. It was good. It was up till, what, 3 a.m., mixing it? So, what are we launching today? What does this mean? This means decentralization of templates. And back when Ocean launched, most people didn't even know what templates were. And when we launched our template, famously, some people took exception to it, which highlighted the fact that up until that point, no one had really been paying attention to it, and there was an expectation that they were all completely homogeneous. And so we had the crazy idea of setting default op return size to 42 bytes instead of 83 bytes. I don't know where the threshold was, but a lot of people decided some point that became censorship. If you turn the number 83 to 42, no, wait, you can't do that, it's censorship. This didn't make any sense to anyone that knew what they were talking about, but again, we were surprised that that didn't turn out to be a lot of people. So anyway, we said, all right, let's give you multiple templates. And people said, I still don't like it for some reason. There's an issue with that. And we said, well, look, it's your choice. Ultimately, if you want to do this, if you want to do that, as a miner, it's up to you. And more than just people, giving us hate and shit for it, it was more just people saying, I don't know which one to choose. Can you just tell me? And we're saying, you guys as miners have a responsibility to choose what goes in the chain. And there's an advantage to doing that. And you're so unaware of it that it just looks like an extra responsibility to you. It's like living in a world where you can only drive to predetermined locations with some automated semi-robotic thing that just drives you from A to B, and someone's like, here, have your own car and drive it wherever you like, and you're like, where do I go? I don't know where to go. It's like, that's for you to decide, dude. You're a sovereign being, and you should take exception to anyone telling you that you're forced to do things a certain way. So we gave miners that choice. We said, look, this isn't what it is we set out to launch. We want miners just making templates. We're a pool that has nothing to do with us. As a pool, all our job is, hey, you're mining 20%, you're 30% of the pool, you're 20% of the pool. Here's the reward coming out of the chain. Here's how it needs to be split. That's it. All our job to do is to solve cash flow. That's all that we're supposed to do as a pool. The idea that we decide what goes in the chain on behalf of all the miners is crazy. And it's a problem that everyone has been talking about for a long time. And there's been some solutions offered that, have been iterated upon, taken from this team to another team with the name changing here and there. And it's been over a decade, and nothing ever came of it. Because at the end of the day, it's not really about the protocol. We are going to celebrate the protocol today, and I'm going to explain what DATUM is and what it does. But you only get something like this with a team that actually cares about making it a reality. And I'm certainly going to celebrate the team today. So this came as a result very quickly. This was not years in the making, it was months. Some of that speaks to the just technical competence and experience of the people that wrote it. Not me, of course, so I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but I am privileged to work with these people and rub shoulders with them for sure. And the fact that it's there is just a testament to the fact that Ocean launched, and Ocean said, we need this to become a reality. We need miner templates to be a thing. Because this is the Bitcoin I want to see. The Bitcoin I want to see is not the Bitcoin we've had over the last few years. Over the last few years, we had an interesting case study, which was formerly Mara Pool, who I think they just call themselves Mara now, which is more accurate because they are just a solo mining entity. They launched this OFAC compliant block thing they started doing. I don't think they actually, it had any real impact on their blocks besides writing in it OFAC compliant block. And what this caused, you might think somewhat legitimately, was outrage in the Bitcoin community. Everyone said, this is censorship, you can't do this. And they stopped very quickly over the backlash. But that, to me, is not indicative of a community that is functional and going to last, or is taking a lasting approach. That isn't how things should look. The correct response in a functional, healthy ecosystem where Bitcoin is working as it should is not outrage when someone does something like that. It's laughter. That's where we need to be. So if someone tries to do something like that, it just becomes silly and a joke. And we go, okay, go ahead. Because there are thousands of other entities that are not going to do it. But we're not in that position. Then there aren't even tens of other people doing it. You really just, if at my last count, we're at around 5 people, 5 entities responsible for making the decisions about everything that goes inside Bitcoin's blockchain. That is not decentralized. And you can't, if you want to take it back to that realm of outrage and you can't do this to us, you're back to some rage bait post on Twitter where PayPal closed some business owner's account because he mentioned Bitcoin in some capacity, and PayPal went, we don't like you, and they canceled the account, and we get angry about it because they're a centralized payment processor and we want to bully them into doing what we want, right? We want to go outside the usual, all the redundancies that we have, all the inefficiencies that people just don't see the use of until, censorship rears its ugly head. We're taking that mentality of there's a few centralized payment processors and we need to yell at them to do what we want. That is not how we build Bitcoin. The way you build Bitcoin is you end up with thousands and thousands of people doing the job you need them to do. And if some of them want to be recalcitrant, because, hey, miners are ultimately employees of the network, it doesn't matter. There are enough that can do them. There are enough other alternatives out there. So moving into that territory, it's very simple. You leverage the fact that hash rate is actually really decentralized, and that's great, because hash rate is the most important component of what mining is. It's the unfakeable component. It's the proof of work. It's proof of work. It's not evidence of work. It really cannot be faked. Energy did have to be consumed. You cannot fake energy. So someone's got to come along and increase the scope of what those guys do. And I'll get more into the incentives behind that later, because one of the sort of cynical positions has been forever, for the last 10 years, you'll never get miners making templates because it's slightly more work, and we know how it goes when you try and make people do slightly more work. Who's going to do it? Crazy ideologues, no one's going to do that, right? Well, there are things you can do, and I'm pretty confident that those are going to work, to say the least. So someone's got to come along and increase the scope of miners and say, you guys we have to leverage as a network the fact that you are pretty decentralized, you're distributed all around the globe. If a bunch of you decide to voluntarily start engaging in government blacklisting, real censorship, and I want to delineate that from the accusations against Ocean that were, unfounded, as I went into yesterday. Having functional spam filtration is not the same thing, and anyone that would draw an equivalence to them is doing a disservice to us all by denaturing something that would be horrific in Bitcoin if it ever actually started happening. Right? We are taking a preventative measure to prevent censorship before it starts. Because here's the position we're in, and here's how dangerous it is. If censorship in Bitcoin began at the moment, here's what I think it would look like, and it's terrifying. You have the biggest pool that you'll see on the pie chart is Foundry. And what we used to say in 2014, 2015, and there are case studies for it, is if one of those pools started abusing their size or just became too big, because we all know there's incentives for pools to get larger and larger. The bigger the pool is, the less the variance is, and then the slimmer they can keep everything, and the more their miners can make, in theory. Unfortunately, you can't have thousands and thousands of pools in Bitcoin and decentralize things that way, because that's no different than asking everyone to solo mine. It doesn't work. So what would happen if one of those necessarily centralized entities that just ends up with 30% of the hash rate began censoring? Okay, 2014, 2015, 2016, the miners would all just leave. I agree with that, but it's not that time anymore. Half of the miners out there are giant corporations with shareholders that couldn't care less about Bitcoin and don't know anything about it. And to be honest, if they did, instead of investing in mining companies, they would just buy Bitcoin, because 99% of the time you make more sats doing that. But these people aren't interested in sats. They're interested in fiat narratives and silly stories about how they can make loads of money that never really pan out. So you have all these bankruptcies happening. You have just, insane fantasies just told to naive shareholders that have heard about this whole blockchain thing, and isn't there an AI component as well? It's all total bullshit, right? We all know about that. If you know anything about it, just buy some sats and just sit on it and be humble, stack sats. We know that, right? So the naive idea that we can take this 2015, 2016 mentality and say, oh, if the biggest entity right there, which does every single little thing it's told to by the regulators for its own good and on behalf of the pool, but in a complete disservice to Bitcoin, if they started complying with government blacklists, don't worry, all those miners would just leave. I'm saying most of those miners don't even know the difference between Bitcoin and generic blockchain stuff, right? They're still sitting there in 2017 narratives. They couldn't care less. And they can't leave. They've been told by their army of lawyers, you need to stay with this compliant pool, right? They're doing all the compliance on our behalf. We're not allowed to point a single S19J at any other pool, not even for testing. We can't even make the excuse that that's our fiduciary responsibility to our shareholders. We're just not going to do it, right? So, and even more interestingly, look at the Silk Road. Who remembers the Silk Road? This was, as controversial as it was, this was one of the most amazing things about Bitcoin back at the beginning. And it was controversial, right? Because it demonstrated that Bitcoin was permissionless. It didn't discriminate between transaction A or transaction B. It doesn't matter the size. It doesn't matter there's no identity politics component, right? It doesn't matter if you're buying cocaine or if you're buying, you know, a banana. It's all the same to Bitcoin. And when it got shut down, there was two mentalities. One mentality was, didn't you just kill the killer use case of Bitcoin? We're going to die. And the other was, thank God we finally get rid of this whole drug component and this illegality, like, conflation that everyone has with Bitcoin. This is, you know, we can finally be legit. I can go to my parents and say, like, yeah, I told you Bitcoin was good. Like, all that validation, the insecure people seek every time a politician says Bitcoin, and they go, yeah, how do you like me now, Dad? Like, you see this all the time, people seeking validation. And the price, when Silk Road got shut down, the price went schizo. It didn't just go down, it didn't just go up, it did both. But ultimately, it went up a lot. So I think a lot of people would be really, really disappointed if Foundry were called upon by the state to start imposing some sort of regulation. You know, we're talking boiled frogs again. They start very light. Don't worry, it's just a Russian Bitcoin exchange. We're not going to let you process transactions from there anymore. How many people are really going to leave mining on Foundry in that context, given the other things I've given you as the context? None of their shareholders care about it. Some of them might even think it's a good thing, right? We can show that Bitcoin demonstrably can work within the confines placed on us during this, you know, righteous position we're taking in a global conflict, or something like that. People might not understand the deeper principles of keeping Bitcoin neutral, right? It doesn't mean I like Vladimir Putin or Zelensky or Xi Jinping or anything like that if I insist that all of their transactions should be treated the same as anyone else's transactions and get inside the blockchain. But that is too nuanced a point for people that come from fiat land. So I think we might be richly disappointed very soon. And if that were to happen, let's assume that my pessimistic but realistic expectations of what would happen if there really were censorship requirements placed on the regulated US entities that are responsible for so much of what goes on in the blockchain. If they were to just go along with it and we were to see an underwhelming reaction, like what about the hodlers? Like if I saw a Foundry censoring and I saw miners not leaving, which I think is pretty realistic, am I going to sell all my Bitcoin as a result? No, because there's nothing else anywhere near as good as Bitcoin, even in that context. So what we end up with is cucked Bitcoin. That's where you end up, right? Because there's nowhere else to go, and you can't bully miners into leaving, and it would just slowly get worse and worse and worse. That's how you end up. And I think that's realistic. That's not pessimistic. But the worst thing about it is an industry builds up around that. And that digs its heels in, and then you have to fight them whenever you try and make any moves in the opposite direction. This is why what we're doing here is important, because it's a preventative measure. If you can get miners making templates before all this crap starts to happen, then that industry never develops. There's no incumbent censorship complex within Bitcoin that can really get off the ground. There's no one lobbying against you anymore. You strangle it before it begins to exist. That's why you have to do this. But it does mean I have to be up here educating about the necessity of it. before it becomes a thing. And a lot of people are saying, well, it isn't a problem, right? If censorship ever happens, we'll just switch pools. And I'm like, you can't be that naive. You can't think that would just be a given. Not in today's environment. There were no publicly traded miners back in 2015, 2016. It didn't work like that. It does now. You can't rely on these guys having cypherpunk ethos in their blood, right? It doesn't work like that anymore. So knowing how those guys are incentivized, you have to beat them to the punch. We need miners making templates. That is the end of it. If you have that, this industry will never, the censorship industry that gets inside Bitcoin can never grow, and it can never work against us. We don't have to fight them because they don't exist yet. And we need to keep that the case, because we're right on the cusp of it right now. Bitcoin is prone, it's rife for censorship. It just hasn't happened yet. So you can either be lazy and just assume that will continue, or you can just think a little bit forward in the future and say, we need to take preventative action now. So that's what we've done with DATUM. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how this works now. And I really think I'm not a network level engineer. I'm not a guy that can talk about it, deeply into the specifics. But I also think that's probably something that should be done more in detail and, deeper dives on different podcasts and stuff. I think here it's more appropriate to keep it, for me to stay within my lane and talk about what I do understand. It's very lightweight. You're gonna, as a miner, the experience for you will just be you have one more box, and it can be a Raspberry Pi if you like. The hard part is running the Bitcoin node, which you necessarily will have to do to create your own templates. DATUM simply sits on top of your Bitcoin node and does the following things. First off, it's just a Stratum v1 server for your miners to talk to. Very simple. This is important because it means we don't need Bitmain and WhatsMiner or Canaan or any of these companies that manufacture miners, or any of the aftermarket firmware producers like Brains and Vanish and LuxOS. We don't need them to cooperate to come up with a new protocol. We're compliant with the one they already use. That's incredibly important because it makes it realistic. You have this box and it acts as a pool server for your miners to connect to. And at that point, assuming you've put it on top of a node, I can configure this thing in like 10 minutes at this point, and I'm no technical whiz, right? It's been made very simple and very lightweight. At that point, you can just solo mine. You put a Bitcoin address into the config, and you're mining away, and if you find a block, you send it to the network. I mean, amazingly, tangent, but amazingly, there's just been no way for anyone to solo mine in a practical sense. And you've got these things called solo pools that have showed up. Where someone will really just say, I'll run the Stratum server for you because of course you can't figure out how to do it. As a miner with, $2 million worth of hashing equipment, you still can't figure out how to set up a Stratum server because no one has ever required it of you and it hasn't been made easy. So you get someone else to set up a pool server for you, which is relatively trivial, but no one does, and they take a 2% split, and then you solo mine, even though you're still just hashing. And if you get lucky, you find a block and you get 98% of the reward, and the guy that ran the Stratum server for you gets 2%. DATUM obviates the need for that. If you want to solo mine DATUM, there's finally software out there that you can I have a Bitcoin node on a Raspberry Pi. It cost me $75 plus an old drive I had lying around. I installed DATUM on top of it. It uses 0.1% of my CPU or whatever. It's so lightweight. My miners all point at it, and if I find a block, this is the Bitcoin address I get paid to. See you in 6 years when I manage to solo mine something. That's what you can expect with DATUM. It's designed for decentralized mining from the ground up. There isn't anything else like that out there. Nothing like that exists. I'm going to get into the obvious comparison that someone's going to ask me towards the end. We'll do a Q&A. But that's what it does at heart. It's just for people to mine and interact directly with the network. So your miners are all reaching out to DATUM, and they're getting work because it's just a Stratum server. At the same time, DATUM is reaching out to your Bitcoin node and saying, hi, can I have a new template? And that's the Bitcoin node. It's synced up to the network. It's found the latest block. It's got a mempool, and I'd like everyone to leave today knowing that there's no such thing as the mempool. If there was the mempool, you wouldn't need a blockchain because that would imply that we all agreed on an order of events. The whole point of the blockchain is that none of us agree on what's happening preemptively, or what's a version of events. That's something we can't unilaterally agree on. That is the Byzantine general's problem, and it's your job to maintain a mempool to draw unconfirmed transactions from. That's what your node is doing. And when your DATUM server reaches out to your node, it says, hi, can I have a list of transactions? Can you give them to me in a way that will, generate a valid block template for me? It does so, and then the DATUM server takes that and issues work to all of the, the mining equipment attached to it. But here's the smart part. Here's where it gets fun, right? All that I've just described at the moment is solo mining. The fun part is the fact that DATUM works out of the box with Ocean and any DATUM compliant pool, which of course is just Ocean at the moment because we wrote the protocol, but it has the additional ability to collaboratively mine and take Coinbase splits from a pool that is going to work with a DATUM user. So as a DATUM user, you can reach out to a pool that supports it and say, hey, I'm basically solo mining at this point, but while I'm solo mining, I would like to split the Coinbase rewards, the rewards in the generation transaction, that's how miners get paid. I would like to split that in accordance with what you think I should, in accordance with how you think I should split it up. And if I do so and prove to you that I'm doing so, I want to become eligible to receive a split from everyone else doing the same thing on this pool. What does that mean? It means collaborative mining. That means reward splits, which is all anyone ever wanted a pool to do in the first place, because it means no more cash flow issues from solo mining. But everything else you're doing is just solo mining. If you decide to stop respecting the split that the pool is suggesting to you, you're still mining. You're just solo mining at that point. You're not qualifying for a reward split. Everyone has to, as a pool, we have an obligation to keep everyone collaboratively doing what benefits each other, right? If two people are mining on Ocean and they're both using DATUM, and let's just make it simple, let's say they both have 50% of the hash rate, all that Ocean is doing is transparently saying, this guy's doing that much work, this guy's doing that much work, here's a Coinbase split that you should use in your block template that pays both of you 50%, and we'll update it every few seconds. If you use this, you both become entitled to half of each other's rewards. So instead of both of you finding one block a month, instead of Ocean finding one block a month and you solo mining once every 2 months, you get paid twice as often and you get paid half as much. Amounts to the same thing, but it's better cash flow. That's the entire point of pooled mining. That's it. And then what happens is we move into that territory that I like to be in, which is if you have thousands of people doing that, we can even have other pools become sub-pools of Ocean. Ocean can become more than 51% of the network because it doesn't matter anymore. All we can do in that context is lie about a reward split. And people can withdraw their hash rate if we do that before a block even gets found. So we could completely destroy our own reputation and betray our miners without even being able to steal 3 Bitcoins as a result. So are we going to do it? No. And more importantly, if someone comes and puts a gun to our head and says, you can't include these transactions in your blocks, all we can do is say, well, here are the miners connected to us that are doing that. And by here are the miners, I mean I'm giving you a list of Bitcoin addresses, and I don't know who any of them are. I like that, because that is laughable. I'm really looking forward to the day where, in an ideal world, this gets adopted. We have hundreds of miners, thousands of miners producing their own block templates, getting reward splits from Ocean, and someone comes after us and says, all right, this can't go on, we need censorship, and we actually comply to the extent that we can, and it's just useless. That's my favorite scenario. Here, I really do like this, because the first time someone mined an Ocean block that contained, op return of, data carrier size of 42 bytes instead of 83 bytes, and there was all this, allegations of censorship over us doing that. Super ironic, because we're basically the only entity in mining that was trying to solve the censorship problem, and for us to get accused of it was bitterly ironic. But nonetheless, when we did, at that time, we had template options for miners. And that was not DATUM, right? That was still us making templates centralized. It was just at least giving miners a choice and saying, hey, you'll need to start thinking about this because soon we're going to give you more than this. But anyway, when people yelled at us about the contents of our block, I just gave them a Bitcoin address on Twitter and said, that's the miner that mined it. Go find them. And I loved it because someone was mad, they wanted to yell at me, and I was telling them, I don't have control over this thing. You have to go and talk to whoever it is whose Bitcoin address that is. And by the way, I don't know because we're a permissionless pool, right? I just love that. It's just, that's where I want to be in Bitcoin. And we're going to get there. So DATUM, very simple protocol. That's what it does. It allows you to be a solo miner that doesn't want to wait however long you typically have to wait to find a block. And for most of us, without tens of exahash, it's just not realistic to wait around for blocks to be found. It's too much variance. The blockchain itself is too random. It's too unpredictable. Miners are going to collaborate. They're going to split. And this is, again, my talk yesterday was all about making Bitcoin practically workable, right? And taking influence and leave from Satoshi, who I believe was the ultimate pragmatist. And I believe ideological approaches to Bitcoin are admirable, but we have to respect the fact that Satoshi was always the one that said, we need this thing to just work, right? And he would break things as necessary, and he would move in a certain way that was necessary at the time, right? And there's been clashes of approach before, and I'm not going to get into some of the examples of that. But at the end of the day, if you want an idealistic solution to censorship in Bitcoin, everyone's got a solo mine. But that's not a realistic solution. You're not going to do it, and there's very good reasons for that. So we need to respect the fact that people are going to collaboratively mine. And then we need to respect the fact that, as I said earlier, there is a minimum size to a mining pool. You cannot just have lots and lots and lots of mining pools, because there is basically a minimum size for you to become viable. You have difficulty adjustments every 2 weeks. You need to be able to find a few blocks within that period. If you can't, it's not good enough. It's not a good enough product. And the smaller pools are going to lose out to the bigger pools. This was one of the motivations of keeping blocks small during the block size wars, was the bigger blocks get, the more centralized pools get, and the last thing we need is another incentive in the wrong direction there. So that's very important, right? And when people talk about the size of blocks, ignorantly, they will just talk about how cheap hard drives are these days, and so that's not it. Like, there's another reason, right? If you have giant blocks, and the biggest pool in the world is the one finding 70% of the blocks, every 10 minutes they get a few seconds head start in the race because the other smaller mining pools, the ones that are already struggling to compete, have to download this giant block before they can start on the next race, while the guy that found the last block's already 5 seconds ahead of you, 10 seconds ahead of you. That doesn't work. But anyway, the centralizing pressures of mining pools are inevitable. So it's not about making more pools. That's not going to solve much, right? It does help a little bit, but as I say, there is a limit to how many pools you can really have. There's a reason we basically have 5 or 6 pools basically doing everything at the moment. It's because it's hard to have any more than that. The problem is what you do as a pool. And that's the point of Ocean. We want to disintermediate. We want to get rid of what exists between the blockchain and the miner. That's it. And that was the fun part. So let's get into the economics of it. Everyone thought, there is no way Ocean is going to be as lucrative as mining elsewhere. Boy, did that turn out to be wrong. So wrong. And I'm going to get into it now because, man, we hit just about every snag anyone possibly thought could happen, and some things that no one had even dreamed of. About everything that could go wrong with Ocean went wrong. And we thought, this is going to be embarrassing when the numbers come out. And we were paying out way more than everyone else. And this took us by surprise. We had no idea that it was going to be like this, right? And so let's talk about reward systems. It's a little tangential to DATUM, but it all kind of ties in together at the end. Hopefully I can, weave this all together. But we launched and we got stupendously lucky. Before we even turned off one of the test nodes that, was mining before we launched Ocean, and we wanted to keep it secret, so this node didn't have any of the Coinbase tag or any of the payout splits or anything. So we found a block, and Mononaut tweeted, Ocean just found their first block. I was still on the plane home from the launch, and we didn't expect to find one for like at least a week. And I just tweeted back at him like, what? I don't think that's one of ours. And like Jason, who was like sleeping for the first time in a month, I was like ringing him, like, sorry, dude, you got to get up. And I was worried, like, do we have the private keys for this? Is this actually one of our blocks? He's like, yeah, of course we do. It was just one of our nodes was, a secret node that didn't have Ocean written in and stuff. And, that one was the one that created this template. So that's what happened. So that was kind of very, freakishly lucky. And then we found another one right after that. And we had people saying, all right, I'm converting to Catholicism. This is just too much, right? So that happened, and then we went for 3 weeks or something without a block. And it was the entire month of December 2023, basically, which was the second highest transaction fee in Bitcoin's history. We found no blocks. And I thought, this is going to suck, right? And our miners are earning nothing, right? This is the price of disintermediation, right? As a miner, you can get more revenue overall, but it means if we're not finding blocks, you're not getting any money, right? That's what happens when you got no middlemen. So we got unlucky there. The same thing happened around the halving, and we had someone throw an extra exahash on our pool during the halving just to try and leverage the fact that you get more of a split when when Ocean finds blocks than you do on other pools. And millions of dollars were getting found in transaction fees around the halving. We found no blocks, despite having that extra exahash thrown at us. That sucked. We were running below 100% luck overall anyway, and even in those periods where we were approaching returning to 100%, we still weren't, we were doing that during times of low fees. We kept finding blocks at weekends, which historically always have lower fees than during the week. They always spike back up on Monday morning. And, not only that, the bad luck would we found 3 empty blocks, right? Which is this ironic, species of luck that actually hurts you. An empty block is something that you might find if your block happens to be just a couple of seconds after the last network block, which means you got really lucky. The network found a block, you rolled the dice, and you got lucky with your dice roll, and you found a block immediately. In Bitcoin, that looks like luck, but it's actually terrible for transaction fee revenue because there's just not much fee pressure built up yet. The network just found a block and swept out all the high-paying transaction fees. And, we found 3 of these empty blocks, which was probably like a 1 in 100,000 chance or something, because we'd only found like 30 blocks, and 10% of them were empty. And no, this is not indicative of an issue with the pool. It's really just, wow, you found a block 3 seconds after the last network block, and you've done that 3 times in the space of 30 blocks. That's pretty rare. We know blocks are expected to be 10 minutes, right? So that happened. There were other species of bad luck. Okay, thank you. There were other things, that made us unlucky, a few other things. And nonetheless, people were running experiments. They were mining on us. People could compare data with payouts from us, even if they weren't mining on us, because all our stats are transparent. And we're the only pool to do that, by the way. And they were saying, yeah, Ocean's paying out more than 10% more than the other pools. And this comes down to payout system, right? And if you're incredulous about that claim, I sympathize, but the intuition that backs it up should be really simple for everyone to understand. We disintermediate. If you're 50% of Ocean's pool, you get 50% of what comes out of the blockchain. There is no way to get more than that. That's it. So if some middleman comes along and says, I'm going to smooth out variance for you, I'm going to pay you the same no matter what happens, right? I will pay you this amount per share based on a rolling average that gets recalculated every 24 hours. That is the dominant payout model. That is FPPS. And it's not a very sustainable model. I don't think anyone that actually does it likes it. And I think it's become a kind of cheap fiat reminiscent addiction for miners' sake, because they've gotten so addicted to being able to, always have a predictable amount of income that they've been prepared to sacrifice a lot of what they're owed in order to get that. And Ocean is the low time preference pool for miners. Ocean genuinely sucks sometimes for miners. It's been 12 days since we found a block. This is our unluckiest streak ever. And our miners are weathering the storm because they know ultimately you end up with more, because there isn't a middleman saying, don't worry about dry streaks. I will pay you no matter what. If someone ever offers you that, they're doing so because they're taking a big cut. They're taking a big enough cut to justify it, right? That's just the reality of it. But the FPPS model, we all know it's not going to last long because it depends on transaction fee revenue not breaking everything, and we know it will. At the moment, transaction fee revenue is still negligible. As I mentioned yesterday, it's around 1% of what miners bring in. Typically, you have 3.125 Bitcoin come out as subsidy, and that's 99% of what miners earn every block, and then you have around 3 million sats as well in transaction fee revenue. Literally just 1% extra. It's Sunday right now, I'm not looking at the blockchain, but I bet that's even optimistic. We're probably like 2 million sats a block, right, in transaction fee revenue. It's barely gonna make any difference. It's not gonna move the needle. But one day, we know that subsidy is gonna keep halving every 4 years, and transaction fee revenue likely will go up. At that point, FBPS becomes impossible, because how can I pay you a predictable amount when we have no idea what transaction fee revenue is? That is the kind of product that you might get a scam email about, where someone says, hey, I have a proprietary trading algo where I can generate 10% yield if you just deposit your Bitcoin in this thing, right? That's someone promising that they can predict the future and, you know, planning on splitting the rewards with you, right? That's a scam, right? All of your spidey senses should tell you that. So that model is dead, so miners are gonna have to go back to accepting variance, or they're just gonna have to accept increasing and increasing and increasing commission payments to people that promise to eat the variance for them. And we think FPPS is dead. That's why we launched our payout system, Tides, and that's why it operates the way it does, and miners have had a really good experience with it. So, as expected, I've forgotten how that ties in to the rest of what it was I was gonna say with DATUM. But the two go hand in hand, right? If you're prepared as a miner to take more responsibility and more variance, it's just reminiscent of Bitcoin itself, right? Some people are never gonna hodl, they're never gonna get into Bitcoin because they're too high time preference. They cannot deal with watching something they put, you know, an appreciable amount of their life savings into crash 80% and stay down there for several years. That's just not something most people can stomach, right? It's a rare breed that does it. It's a beautiful thing that happens in Bitcoin because it kind of keeps the space a lot more niche in a good way, right? It stops it from becoming a victim of its own success too quickly, which is really important, right? Bitcoin is made up of very committed people, a lot of ideologically minded people that are in it for the mission. They're here because if it just went up in a straight line and was, you know, not volatile, we wouldn't have Bitcoin anymore. It would just be inundated with, you know, normies, and I'm allergic to normies, so I think we all are, right? So Ocean is the same thing. It brings that same ethos and mentality back to mining, where it says, look, you're gonna have to deal with volatility, and you're gonna have to deal with some personal responsibility too. And if you're not prepared to do either of those things, not only are you failing ideologically and are you doing something that disappoints me and your mother's ashamed of you, but you're gonna earn less money. And that's how I think it all ties together, and I'm glad I remember this, because this is ultimately the thing the pessimists have thrown at us that sounds realistic is, why is anyone going to do this? Why are they going to make their own templates? Why will they be bothered to do it? You know, it doesn't matter if you literally have a Raspberry Pi lying around in your desk somewhere and you're gonna plug it in and you have an SD card and it costs you zero money and maybe 20 minutes of your time. Still more effort than if I just get the pool to make the template, right? Why will anyone do this? And you have a point, right? I'm not gonna pretend that's not a valid point, right? Inertia is always gonna happen, and we're still going to make a template on the Ocean website for miners to use that just don't wanna make their own templates. But we are turning on fees. And the fee structure on Ocean is structured so as, if you're going to use the centralized template on Ocean, we are going to charge you twice as much as a fee than the people that are prepared to make their own templates. So you're going to literally make more money by moving away from the FPPS system. That's a given at this point. But on top of that, the one pool that's offering the real alternative to FPPS is also saying, hey, if you're prepared to take on more responsibility and make your own templates and actually decentralize this aspect of Bitcoin, you can make twice as much money as well, or you can lose half the amount in in fees that you pay to the provider. That's a good deal, right? It's going to be way lower than anyone else. The numbers we settled on are 2% fee, which is kind of industry standard, around the lower end of it, and half of that, 1% fee for miners that are prepared to use DATUM and make their own templates. And given that it will take you 20 minutes and maybe worst case scenario, $400 or $500 worth of hardware. That's enough for you to run 10,000 miners just because of how lightweight this thing is. I don't see anyone not doing it. And we have the best support in the space, in my opinion. Try getting an email back 5 minutes later when you ask something, 3 a.m. That's me. That's what I'm doing. If you get a response from the mining handle on, mining at Ocean XYZ, that's 90% of the time, that's me responding. And we're quick, and we want to help you get set up. We've been helping people set up Lightning nodes because we offer Lightning payments, but you need to be running your own node necessarily in order to get them. Everything we do is catered towards making Bitcoiners sovereign in the way they use it, right? We're not going to pay out your account. We pay out to a Bitcoin address. We're not going to give you a Lightning payment to an LSP. You need to be running a Lightning node in order to generate a Bolt 12, in order, and sign the transaction, right? There are no accounts on Ocean. Everything requires using Bitcoin in a native sovereign capacity. So, yeah, lastly, it just comes down to that. If you want to be able to take advantage of the lowest fees and maximize your profit in mining, you have two choices now. You have solo mining, which we've actually made a great deal easier thanks to DATUM, and you have pooled mining, which you can do without it undermining the decentralization of Bitcoin. You're now able to do it in a collaborative context, in a transparent context. You can get paid out directly from the chain, and it's the absolute best way for you to maximize revenue. So with that, I'll round off the presentation there. Thank you. And we should
Test.
time frame.
Hey, where's your DATUM shirt?
When was I supposed to take this off?
I think right now.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
Could we do something fun? I'm going to turn around and you guys just read off the words for everybody on Spaces to hear. Ready? Woo!
Let's talk specifics, actually.
What? Data.
Yep, so availability. We have some people running it currently. Tentative rollout, nervous developers, right? They want to get every last thing just absolutely perfect, right? Well, the guys on our end of it, the mouthpieces and all that, we're pushing for just release the thing, it's ready, right? But, we're doing an exclusive beta, I think, for the next, I'm not going to say 2 weeks because no one will believe us. The plan is 18th of September. That's when it will be publicly available. 18th of October, sorry. That's when it will be available for everyone. It's MIT licensed. If anyone wants to know about the availability of the source code and the open sourceness of it all, of course it's open source. We're asking you to run this in your mining farm, right? We're not Bitmain. We don't expect you to run closed source binaries with backdoors in them, right? You're going to have this code. You're going to be able to review it. It will be publicly available, public beta, 18th of October. Until then, we have an exclusive beta. If you want, just reach out to us, say, hey, I want to run this thing. We'll hold your hand through it. If you don't know how to set up a node, if you don't know how to configure your node to be able to talk to something that is requesting block templates, we'll help you do all that. We think it's really simple, and we'd appreciate your help because any snags you run into are probably things we could just design better on the user interface aspect. So anyone that wants to reach out and help us do this, be much appreciated. And
email for that is datum@ocean.xyz.
Yep. So anyone feel like they're going to go home and try and run this? Yeah.
All right.
Doesn't matter. You can do it with your BitX. You can do it with your, as I said, 10,000 ASICs pointed at a Raspberry Pi is probably just fine.
For sure. I really appreciate you guys. We're just going to say a few thank yous, and then if there's a few minutes, we'd like to open it up for questions, but the organizers can let us know if that's okay.
Just a quick, I'll start the thank yous by just asking, has anyone got a Start9 node? Anyone heard of the project? Right, so that's one easy way to run a node. DATUM is already packaged up for that. So that means you can just plug it in, install it as a service. You have to do one tiny hack, which is 3 lines of entering code into a terminal. I don't know if that scares you, but I think I made the instructions pretty simple. And I'll begin the thank yous with that. Leo Haff Great, very young developer from France has helped me package these things because I suck at Docker and TypeScript and pretty much everything to do with code. So he helped me with that, as well as Chris Guida. So big thank you to those guys. The website, and generally helping us since launch with all things web related, Jay Slater, he's killed it. If you go on Ocean XYZ right now, we have a completely new website. This was designed by Skylar, and JD probably helped with that as well as making that awesome video you saw at the beginning. We want to thank Mempool Space. Should we get into specifics of why we want to thank them, or should we leave that? Well, I was talking about incentives. Why would anyone use that, right? Well, because when you design your own, I can't believe I forgot to mention this. When you design your own block template using DATUM, you get to write your name in it. And wouldn't it be great if that name was visible for the world to see on the world's the most prime real estate in the Bitcoin space? The place, the timeline where the name of the pool is written, that's not gonna, when it comes to Ocean, it's not gonna say the name of the pool, it's gonna say the name of the miner. So if you wanna etch your name into history, you need to make the block yourself, and I think that's a pretty big incentive. I think that might be bigger than the 50% off fees thing, to be honest. So that's Mempool Space. Thank you so much to them for working with us. They did so because they support the mission of decentralizing templates. They're Bitcoiners, and they want to encourage and help offer incentives in that regard too. I really appreciate them being true Bitcoiners in that respect. Bob Burnett of Barefoot Mining, he was the first guy ever he was the first non-Ocean person to run DATUM, and he's been running it for the last week. So big thank you to him. He was also the first guy to agree to mine Ocean before we launched. He's a fantastic Bitcoiner. He's Boomer BTC. He has this podcast, Old Man Yells. I encourage you to go watch it. He's great. The conference organizers here have done a great job. Thank you to them. And last, and definitely not least, last but most, really the hero of this whole thing is, well, I'll get into Luke in a minute, but Jason Hughes. Jason Hughes is who wrote this thing from scratch in a few months. And if anyone has been following the whole Stratum V2 saga, we know 10 years apparently isn't enough to do this. But if you're Jason, you can do it in a few months. And he's done it. So a big round of applause to Jason.
If you want to know more about Jason, just Google 2017 Tesla hack, and that's him.
That's a good fun one. I've told you all about it.
I
just finally, Luke.
Just want to throw out two more thank yous as well. Jared again for mining with us and for hosting the conference, and Jack Dorsey for being our supporter through this whole thing. So, thank you.
And I think he can't be here today. Luke was here yesterday, but had to go unfortunately. Someone had to take the initiative and say this isn't working, and that was Luke, and he's behind the whole thing. And it's just, for us, it gets boring after a while of just being like, Bitcoin's in a bad state, someone needs to sort it out. Luke comes along and just, if you've ever been on the phone with him, it's just like, someone's got to fix it again. Like, he's done this so many times. This was done in Taproot activation, and who's heard of the Lightning Network? You've heard of that? Like, the only reason we have that is because in multiple ways, someone was like, okay, SegWit needs to happen, and everyone thinks it needs to be a hard fork. No, it doesn't. I found a way to do it as a soft fork. That was Luke. Then it was SegWit needs to happen, and the miners won't let us have it, so someone needs to release a client that forces them to do it, and then that needs to get used. Someone did the former. That wasn't Luke. That was Shaolin Fry. But everyone laughed at it until Luke said, nope, this is happening, and he got in that fight with Jihan Wu, right? And, should I do the quote? Probably not. Sorry. So, but it happened. Jihan said it looked silly, and then it happened in the end anyway, and we got SegWit, and that's why we have Lightning today. And, we had the accidental hard fork back in 2013 where, one developer was saying, don't worry about it, let the market sort it out. And that to me was as silly as watching your kid run out into traffic and saying, don't worry, the free market will sort it out, rather than grabbing them. That was that silly, in my opinion, and Luke was the one that grabbed the kid, right? And, I don't even know where to begin when it comes to Luke. It's an absolute honor to work with him. Some people love the guy. Some people are like, will go to their grave despising him. He's that kind of character, right? He's very, very committed, very strong in what he believes. And we owe him a massive debt because of that, because no one else has really ever come and stood up for what needs to be done in Bitcoin as consistently as this guy at all. So I'm going to ask for a round of applause for Luke, for sure.
Do we have time for any questions? All right, no time for questions. Guys, thanks so much. Stop by the booth. Definitely come talk to us. DATUM@ocean.xyz is how you request access to the exclusive beta. So thank you so much again.
Thank you.